Thanks for joining, everyone. We'll give everybody another minute or two. Right now, most attendee mics are muted. If you raise your hand, I'll unmute you if you need to speak, or when it's time for questions, of course. And it is officially 5 o'clock. I say, in the interest of allowing more to join, we go to at least 5:01 before we officially get started. All right. I promised 5:01 start, so here we are. Thank you for attending this 15th meeting of the Barnes Air National Guard Base Restoration Advisory Board. We have shared the agenda in advance. It's pretty similar to previous meetings. We'll have a quick agenda review, which is this, talk about meeting logistics for this Teams meeting. It is only an online meeting this time to accommodate schedules, and we apologize for that. We'll follow up with welcome and introductions, RAB business, cover an environmental restoration program, and RI status updates. Public questions and comments will follow with closing remarks. In terms of meeting logistics, these are the same meeting guidelines we've used for previous meetings, but just really quickly, please do note that the meeting is being recorded. It's super helpful for our meeting summaries. And to get posted on the RAB site. RAB members will be invited to ask questions at the end of each topic. Please do raise your hand to be called on. Introduce yourself so that everybody knows who is speaking. I will say online that's a little bit easier since we can see your names on the screen. Please observe a 2-minute limit to enable other RAB members to participate. And for those public participants, members who are not on the RAB, please hold your questions to the end of the meeting. We will have time dedicated to that. Submit your questions through the chat feature. It's available at the top of the screen, and I will show that in just a moment. And questions will be read and addressed at the end of the meeting. You can feel free to submit questions, and I will get to them. So as they occur to you, feel free to put those in the chat. Again, this is just a quick recap of our ways to use the tools on the computer. We do ask that the camera be turned off to save bandwidth. We're showing the presentation on the screen. A lot of people, it is easier for their systems if everybody's not taking up the bandwidth with their cameras. Participants, sometimes it's at the top, otherwise at the bottom, you can see who's in the meeting. To ask a question, please use that raise hand feature. It's right in the bar at the top of the screen. You can also click to see that chat box I mentioned earlier. And of course, the microphone's there to unmute yourself. Many are automatically muted at the start of these meetings, and I will allow you to unmute yourself when your hand is raised and it's your turn to speak. And again, encourage public members to put their comments into the chat. For those people, and I don't see any actually who have joined by phone, so I will not mention that, except if we do have somebody that drops and changes to the phone. Remember to raise your hand so that we're aware you want to speak. You'll dial *5 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute yourself if you decide to change to the phone. Moving on, Kathy Hillman will provide a welcome and introductions, and followed by Colonel Glass. Kathy? Kathy, you're muted if you're speaking, but you are able to unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for attending tonight. I am very glad that my voice, our RAB voice, was listened to and included a part of a slide that I wanted to see, except it's very, very small and it was hard to see. So I want to make sure that everybody notices the change in the date as we go through these. Thank you, everybody, for attending.
And Kathy, I will mention that the slide that on the schedule, originally I had placed that new slide towards the end of the presentation. We have actually moved it up to follow the schedule, so it makes a little bit more sense. So you notice that. Colonel
Okay.
Glass, would you like to share some comments?
Hello, everyone. Thanks again for participating in this very important endeavor for us. I think I have a chance to talk at the end as well, but again, just very thankful for everyone's continued commitment to this project, and am excited to hear what we have to talk about today. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So here we are with the people who typically participate in these meetings. It hasn't changed since the last meeting. We have an Air National Guard team on the call. Lieutenant Glass, as you just heard, Robert Lewis will speak today. I don't see Kathleen Baker on, but we also have representatives from BB&E, Dawson and Jacobs. I'm not sure if EA is here, to be honest. Community RAB members, you know who you are. I see many of you on the call, and that is great. My apologies. Massachusetts. Sorry, I'm checking really quick to see if we do have DEP on the line. If you're here.
Tamara's here. Tamara Cardona-Merrick is here.
Great, thank you. And then moving on to the next group, we have our Army Corps of Engineers participants on the line. Tracy Williams is with us, and quite a few others. I keep letting people in. Don Thomas just joined. We have the Battelle contractors. Andrew Barton will give a presentation today on the RI status. And as I mentioned, other contractors on the line that you're familiar with. I'm double checking that Chris Clark got in. He is a RAB member also. He was, wait. Kristen, you mentioned in the chat that a RAB member was waiting. I did not see him. Oh, yes, there he is, just as Chris. Okay, sorry about that, guys. Moving on to RAB business, there is not a great deal. If anybody has any comments or concerns on the April 2026 meeting summary, please let me know. Otherwise, you can voice your approval, and that will be finalized and posted on the website. Hearing nothing, I'm going to assume those are approved. Regarding upcoming meetings, we're still on the same schedule that's been in place. So our next meeting is scheduled for October 22nd. Just, for awareness, I think we're all pretty aware that last year the government was shut down for the October meeting. It's a possibility again this year. If that is to occur, if the government is shut down as far as October 9th, if the shutdown continues to then, we will have to make the decision to cancel the October 22nd meeting. It doesn't allow for preparation. Kathy, you're shaking your head. The next meeting following that will be January 28th and then April 22nd. Now we enter RAB meeting member discussion. Again, as I mentioned, please raise your hand and so you can unmute yourself when you're recognized and ask your question or make your comment, please. Kristen? Kristen, your mic is, you're able to unmute your mic. Are you able to unmute your mic, Kristen? Kristen, I can see that you can, but you're not unmuted. You do have that capability. I can do something else to make it easier for you.
There we go. Thank you. I wasn't able to click it before. I just wanted to say that if Kathleen was shaking her head, it is probably because these RAB meetings, first of all, only happen quarterly, but second, this is our public involvement process, which is our right. And so I understand that people can't do their jobs if they can't be paid. And Ray, I get that, but this is our right whether or not you get paid. And so I feel like if you find out on October 9th that you're not going to be able to have the meeting, then all of the materials that should have been shared should be sent over and we can have our own meeting. But it is our right to this information at a minimum of quarterly, and it's not cool for people to just like, it is not okay that the potentially responsible party chooses not to fund what is our right. Thank you.
Thanks, Kristen. I can take that under advisement. Obviously, if people aren't working, they're not going to be able to prepare materials, but we can assess if there is a summary that can be provided via email or other ways to provide information. I cannot make that commitment on the part of the team that actually prepares the information, but we can look at what sort of an update we can provide in advance of that potential government shutdown. Kathy?
Is there any way that you could pre-do it if you think that it's going to happen? Because as it stands now, we didn't get the minutes up until the time that the RAB team asked. And things were not posted in a timely fashion. So that's my concern, because if you're anticipating that already, I mean, that's not saying much for your team. And as a citizen here, I really feel like we still need that information, and it needs to be more timely. Why should we have to ask for anything? Thank you.
My apologies. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Robert.
I'll say this is Robert Lewis, National Guard Bureau and the Restoration Program Manager for Barnes Air National Guard Base, and I appreciate it. We want to hear from y'all. We want to be there in person. We want to hold these meetings. We want to provide you with information, and we want to get your feedback. Unfortunately, it's these things, they do take time to put together. They take time to get the data or the material that's going to be shared has to go through all of the channels before we can share that information with you. And I know that is frustrating. If I was you, Kathy, I would be frustrated too. I'd be on the other end shaking my head, just as vigorously or more so. But there's only so much we can do uh, on our end. We're not the ones that are in charge of that, and it's not up to anyone on this call. Unfortunately, we will do what we can, and if we don't do it at this meeting, we will provide the information at the next meeting. So it's not that nothing gets. You're not going to not get the information. It's just going to be later than anybody would like. Thank you.
Any additional questions during this RAB member discussion? In that case, we'll move on to the status update for the ERP.
Hi, everyone. Again, it's Robert Lewis, the National Guard Bureau Restoration Program Manager here for Barnes Air National Guard Base. As far as the Environmental Restoration Program goes, right now we're just in the process of the PFAS RI. That is the only thing that's really occurring right now at the Barnes. So I'm not going to get into it much here because Drew's going to present everything, but we have just finished up most of our field work. I think there's a few things we have left to grab, but they've been out there doing sampling, installing monitoring wells, going through the surface water and sediment. And Drew is going to provide y'all with a lot of information. I hope you find it useful and helpful. And that's where we are for the PFAS RI. So we can kind of move on from this slide. Next slide. All right, here is our restoration calendar that we like to look at. The red line is where we currently are. You can see we're in the Q3 of the year, Q4 of the fiscal year, finishing up our RI field work. We've got a little over a quarter, looks like, of field work left to go. Then we should go into the report stage, RI report phase as it is right now. Next slide. All right, here is the slide that Kathy was alluding to earlier that she wanted to see. Kathy, thank you for your input. Happy to provide the slide. This goes to the long-term schedule update. For those who I guess have or have not seen it, there is a report that's put out by OSW that provides an estimated date for when the RI, the remedial investigation and feasibility study phase, will end. That date is currently sitting at 2050 of September. This is what I guess we want to kind of address tonight. I'm going to tell you that this date is fluid, but this date is also not something that we put together. I have no part in this. The installation has no part in this. Anyone on this call has no part in the date. So if you want real answers, we're going to have to go to OSW, and you're going to have to speak with them. But I want to help kind of clarify why the date continues to shift. So if you look at like drinking water regulations, they firmed up the PFAS MCLs and everything for PFAS in June of 2024. Those went to a lot more stringent standards. And when you do that, that increases the scope and the time of your investigation. So not only are we looking at these smaller numbers like the 4 ppt for drinking water, and these smaller numbers for like the MCLs for 0.063 for some of the soil data. That means you have to go out further. That increases your time of investigation, and it increases the Office of Secretary of War, the Office of Secretary of Defense, OSD. Someone you'll see the report, or OSW, depending on when you're looking. Thanks, Kristen. So those more stringent standards increase the time and scope that it's going to take to do the project. Right now, RRI, the remedial investigation phase that we have done, is continues to stay on course. What's changed is when we add a background study, or we add a data gap study, or an ecological assessment. Those things increase time. Another thing that increases time is that we have 34 other installations that do not have an RI at all. So those have to be conducted as well. Those are other communities that want the same answers that you want. So we have to, the Guard has to get these projects underway, and that all takes time and resources. Another reason these projects will take a longer amount of time than anybody wants. That date of 2050 is, it gives us the RI, the FS, our proposed plan, record of decision. That's when everything is going to be agreed upon. In theory, that's when that will happen. So it's a long-term planning estimate, which, maybe something happens and we move this up or it gets moved further back. That, this is just, it's an estimated long-term schedule. I know you're not happy with that. But in the meantime, I think we should all say, no one, to my knowledge, is currently drinking contaminated water in the city of Westfield. If we were to find that out, and it was attributable to the DOD, then we could conduct an interim remedial action at any time during this investigation. So it's not that anything is going to necessarily halt or we're not going to do anything to help the community. This is just the long-term scheduling of how resources are allocated and planned as far as we can foresee in the future. Yes, Kristen.
Thank you. The thing about it is that people have been drinking contaminated water, and it was Mass DEP that put filtration on the wells, and it was the water ratepayers and the citizens of Westfield who put filtration on those wells. And quite frankly, changing that number, which, by the way, the public comment period on whether or not EPA is even going to bother changing that number, it has just closed, right? So you're not under any gun with that. This makes no sense. It makes no sense at all. There are people who are looking to see whether or not installations are being treated equitably with each other and in comparison. And I really think that maybe we need to know whether or not this has been defunded. I think this is about resources. I don't think this is about whether or not the EPA ever gets off the MCL bandwagon, because you've had to meet Massachusetts standards since this started, because that's what's in the lease. So I understand that you might have been given a group of things to say to us, but we are more educated on our own situation than that.
No, I appreciate that, Kristen. It is, you're
there
correct.
are people drinking bad water. The citizens are the ones who fixed it here. The DOD has spent nothing. The DOD has not brought one bottle of water, and none of my family members who died after service to the DOD ever worked for a Department of War.
No, I appreciate it, and I appreciate your family member's service. Is there a question in there that you would like for me to answer?
I would like to know whether or not we have been defunded.
No, there's nothing that's been defunded. This is programming.
So you're saying that we're getting a lot more programming than we were going to get last year when it was switched to 2034, and now it's 2050, and that's because we're getting so much more? Because we're doing extra things?
Yeah, some of it is, yes. It's the background study, it's the data gap study.
List the extra things we're getting for that time, please.
Robert was explaining those. Please allow him to do so.
Yeah. So it's things like a background study. It's things like a data gap study. It's ecological and health assessment studies. It's those are part of the process. Those are part of the programming that takes effect. Again, these dates are programming numbers. You have funding that's allocated every year. So, right, that's a different. It's not completely disassociated from this process, but that's not what we're talking about. We're not saying that PFAS has been defunded. We're not saying anything of that nature. It's that there is an allocated set of resources that get distributed among all the installations. We have to program for that. This is the programming. This is the result of that OSW estimate. We do our end to program these things to get our projects supported and done. But this is a long-term schedule, and it is fluid.
Kristen, your comment is that won't be distributed as quickly here as was previously estimated.
I'm trying to make sure that I understand the resources
Okay.
it's not like all of a sudden there are many more studies coming in and they're going to take more time. It's that the exact same amount of work is now going to take much longer. That's what I'm hearing. And it's a resource thing because EPA hasn't actually pulled the trigger. Right?
No, I don't have anything to
I
do
just
with the
want us to be
EPA, so
really
that's outside the scope of any conversation I'm having. I don't know what the EPA does or doesn't do. It's not what I'm here for. But yeah, so Kristen, when they changed those standards, as I was saying, like if we had to do, 1 square mile of investigation, now maybe we have to do 4. If we were just using numbers because of different standards, that takes more time. There's also, like I said, the background studies that have been added, data gap studies that have been added, other ecological assessments that have been added based on information we've received from the RI investigations that have been conducted nationwide so far.
Okay, so then what I'm asking for is an index of everything that has been added between the last time the date was changed and now that justifies the date being changed.
I don't know. You'd have to
Thank
take
you.
the data. The reason it's that far out, you'd have to take that with OSW.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. You have your hand up.
Yes. Robert, you stated that the installation, the date was set up by the installation. Who
No,
is the installation?
I did
Barnes?
not. No, I did not say the date was that. So the date, these dates, this projection, this long-term schedule, is a product of OSW. It's not a product of the installation.
No, you did say installation because I wrote it
No,
down.
yeah, I know. I didn't
The-
say. I didn't say that. I said it was not. It was not attributed to the installation or any of us on this call.
Okay, are you saying the installation being Barnes?
Yes,
Or,
sorry, Barnes.
okay, I just want to make that clear. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Robert, did you have anything additional to add to the slide
I
before we
did
move
not.
on?
I think Mary
Oh,
Mary has a question.
yeah, Mary, one moment. You can unmute yourself and ask your question, please. Marianne, you can ask your question, please.
She said not at this time.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm seeing two Marys, different names. Kathy, did you have another question?
Yes, Kristen asked who should she contact about the dates? And is it the Colonel?
No, it's someone at OSW. I can find out who the PA is
Please do
for
so
that.
because Kristen did want a name. Thank you.
Sure.
And just confirming, Mary O'Connell, you have your hand up. Can you unmute yourself, please? Okay, it looks like your hand is down now. We'll move on to the remedial investigation update.
Yeah, thanks,
Hold on,
everybody.
1 second. 1 second. Mary
Sure.
is still wanting to talk, and can someone unmute Mary for her? She doesn't seem to be able to unmute. Mary O'Connell.
I can go a different way. She should have the ability to do it, but I'll just do
And I
it a
think
different
Mary
way.
Ann Babinski wants to speak as well. Thanks, Kristen.
I'm not seeing any hands up. That's where I'm missing them. Sorry about that.
All right, Mary Ann's hands up. And
Yeah, and she should be able to speak.
I don't know. Can someone unmute her though, just in
She
case she
is.
can't?
I mean, I can't, but she is.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
This
Okay.
is Mary O'Connell. Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yes.
ma'am.
Okay, thank you. I don't have a question right now, but it's very inconvenient. Every other meeting we've had, we've been able to mute and unmute ourselves without raising our hand and all that. So if we could please go back to that system, this is cumbersome. Thank you.
Yeah, this is Mary Ann Babinski. Thank you, Kristen, for letting me know where to unmute. I think I've forgotten my question. What, after all this time? No, this is a silly question, only because I am aware that 2050 is 34 years ago. And we suffered by this when we were working on things dealing with the state level with different committees and organization agencies. When there's a change of forces, which may happen here, I don't know how old some of you are or whether you'll be around in 2050 or not. Is there a process that you have for the transition of information? Because you're talking about what could make this go longer than 2050. It might happen sooner or not. But I'd like to know behind the scenes here how this information be carried over. Because one of the things we came up against when there was a change in people working, then those new people came on board and said, I'm sorry, we need more time to get up to speed on what has been going on over all of these years so that we can do justice to developing this process further. So I think that needs to be taken into consideration too, because this is 2050 just makes my head spin. Okay, thank you. I won't be here, just so that you know, so you don't have to listen to me again, because I'll be about 117 by then. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, yes, Marion. Just to your point, I mean, we do have things like the administrative record where all this information is kept, but we hold on to this stuff. So if I were to change, just like as you've already experienced, a number of restoration program managers have changed and contractors changed, all the information is held, by the guard, or it's out there on the administrative record for the public to see. So there, we can transition the data, between different people, contractors, whoever comes to go. Because I seriously doubt I'm going to be around in 2050 as well.
Yes, because they are going to use that as an excuse. We've experienced that before. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for your answer.
You're welcome.
And if there are no more questions, I think Andrew will continue his presentation.
All right. Yeah. Thanks, Carla. So evening, everybody. Andrew Barton here. I'm the project manager for Battelle, or for the SRS Battelle JV, who is the Army Corps contractor for the remedial investigation. So I'll give you an update today on where we stand. We've made a lot of good progress since our last meeting. So this slide right here, you all have seen before. It's our project field work scope, the RI work that we're doing in the field. If an item is highlighted in green, that means it's in progress. So, we're constantly looking for access agreements. A lot of our sampling locations and monitoring well locations are on private property, so we need access to those properties. Utility locating is necessary anytime we break ground for a soil sample or a monitoring well installation. We completed our surface soil sampling, our first round, as Robert alluded to earlier. Actually, I think we had just started this at during our last RAB meeting. We had just started our vertical aquifer sampling in groundwater. So we've completed that, and I'll talk about that here in a couple slides. Since our last meeting, we have initiated and completed our surface water and sediment sampling and our groundwater monitoring well installation and subsequent well development and sampling of those wells for PFAS. We've installed and sampled piezometers, and for those of you who don't know what they are, I'll get into that a little bit later in the presentation. We've collected groundwater and surface water elevation monitoring at our sample locations. And as we're doing a lot of this field work, we will generate material, solid liquid material, such as drill cuttings or extra groundwater from the well that we have to store on base in approved containers. We have to characterize that, and then we'll take it off site for disposal. So that's ongoing throughout the project. And also, as we move forward, we do diligent reporting. We collect daily field logs and report data internally so we can determine our next steps. Okay, next slide, please. One of our fieldwork components that we talked about a little bit at length during our last meeting is vertical aquifer sampling. We're using this approach to spatially and vertically delineate PFAS and groundwater downgrading of the site. We've got a large area, so we're using this screening approach to kind of vertically and spatially delineate PFAS, primarily downgrading or south of the Massachusetts Turnpike here. Vertical aquifer sampling uses direct push drilling to characterize the subsurface soil, which is called the lithology, determine groundwater level in the well, identify groundwater sample collection depths, and to collect groundwater samples. So we had scoped 10 different vertical aquifer sampling locations, and at each location, we would collect up to four groundwater samples based on the various lithology we'd see. We can generally push these. This is done by direct push technology. You can generally push the 2-inch rods down about 80 to 100 feet. So we typically collect the deepest sample we can. We collect another sample at the groundwater interface where PFAS tends to accumulate. And then we'll select up to 2 more depths, either based on lithology changes or kind of if it's uniform lithology, we'll split the difference so that we get a nice uniform profile vertically of PFAS. We have completed 7 locations to date, and those locations are shown here with a green circle symbol. We had some challenges with access agreements, so we hope to get those in place. We have them in place for 2 of the 3 remaining locations, and we hope to get the last one in place. And I think we're scheduled for early August to complete our vertical aquifer sampling. We have received some data for our initial samples that we collected. It's currently being validated, and we hope to present those findings at the next RAB meeting. And we're going to use these data. We're going to take our monitoring well data, which I'll talk about later, to evaluate the need and placement of additional monitoring wells, like phase 2 monitoring wells in the unconsolidated material and in the bedrock to help delineate the extent of PFAS in groundwater. And the next slide here kind of shows you what a direct push rig looks like. It uses force to drive down basically like a 2-inch rod. As I mentioned, it can go about 80 to 100 feet, and it allows us to collect a core of the soil that we can bring that up, evaluate at the surface so we know what we're dealing with. And it also has the capability to collect groundwater samples at discrete depths. So that's the machine right there on the left. And on the right is one of our professional geologists and field technicians, Horatio, collecting a groundwater sample from the VAS 08 location. That's done through some tubing, and there's a pump down the well that'll actually pump the groundwater to the surface. We run it through a series of water quality meter to make sure that we are collecting a sample that's representative of the actual groundwater. And then once our water quality readings have stabilized, we'll collect the groundwater sample and then submit that to the laboratory. And I did want to mention that I think I mentioned it earlier, this is more of a screening tool to kind of get a good idea of where PFAS is present in groundwater, spatially and vertically. And we're going to use these data to collect, as I mentioned, to install monitoring wells where that data is more representative of the aquifer. It's from a developed well, so you can actually use those data for risk assessment evaluations. Okay, next slide, please. So as I mentioned, we also had an initial round of installing groundwater monitoring wells. And the objective of these wells was to spatially and vertically delineate the nature and extent of PFAS in groundwater. And the wells were installed cross gradient, up gradient, and slightly down gradient of the base. As we documented in the UFP QAP, these locations were selected just based on where we had seen PFAS in groundwater and where we might think good locations would be to help delineate where this PFAS is present. And we wanted to look at different aquifer depths, shallow depths, intermediate depths, and or deep depths to make sure we get a vertical understanding of where PFAS is. One of the surprising things here are targeted depths were really based on a bedrock elevation map. What is the depth to bedrock at a lot of these locations? That was put together based on prior borings. We found bedrock to be a lot shallower than we expected. So at some locations where we had proposed installing 2 wells, we were only able to install 1. But that in itself is useful information to update our conceptual site model because we know, how deep the bedrock is and how much unconsolidated material we have to work with. So we were able to install 16 new monitoring wells, develop those wells, and sample them for PFAS at 11 different locations. So at, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4 of the locations we installed nested wells. Or clustered wells where there's 2 different wells to monitor 2 different aquifer intervals. Those data are currently being evaluated, and we'll use those results in conjunction with the vertical aquifer sampling and existing monitoring well data to evaluate the need and placement of additional monitoring wells, both in the unconsolidated material, and we're also scoped to install wells in the bedrock to see if PFAS has migrated in bedrock. So we're going to use all the monitoring well and VAS data to install additional monitoring wells in a phase 2. And we hope that we should have the data validated here in the near term, and we'll be able to present those findings hopefully at the next RAB meeting once we've evaluated them internally. So the next slide here shows our field crew. We used a sonic drill rig to install these wells that can get down real deep to bedrock. It's a much larger rig because we have to make a much larger hole so we can put a 2-inch monitoring well in that hole and put an appropriate well screen and filter pack around that so we collect representative groundwater samples. So we need a much more robust unit than that direct push rig that we use for vertical aquifer sampling. So on the left, we're installing a well at MW20. You can see it requires a lot of water, which is on the picture on the middle picture. That big tank on the right is water to kind of lubricate the well. And those 2 carboys, those rectangular square containers right there, that contains liquid and solid material that's been pulled out of the well. So we'll transfer that over to our storage containers on site for consolidation and eventual off-site disposal. And then on the right here shows collection of a groundwater sample from MW20. We have a well depth finder in there. That's the red unit. Tells us how deep only the well is, and it'll tell us how deep the groundwater level is in the well, so we can keep that fairly stable while we're collecting a groundwater sample. The yellow unit right here, I believe, is our pump. And that pump is attached to that poly tubing on the top side of the picture that is run through a water quality meter. And once those water quality parameters stabilize, we'll be able to collect a groundwater sample and send it off for analysis of PFAS and a few other analytes like total organic carbon that we're using to better understand PFAS migration and the nature and extent of it. Okay, next slide, please. So as I mentioned, we also have started to perform our first round of surface water and sediment sampling. We have 2 of these rounds proposed. One is in the spring and one is in the fall, so that we can understand how conditions may change at different times of the year when there's more or less stream flow. The objective of this is to spatially and vertically delineate the nature and extent of PFAS in surface water and sediment. And I do want to point out that we collect co-located samples. So we collect a surface water sample, and then we collect a sediment sample of the riverbank pretty much right below where we collected a surface water sample. As documented in our QAP, we identified 46 total surface water and co-located sediment sampling locations to monitor up gradient, cross gradient, and down gradient of the site. We have 9 of those locations in Arm Brook, which is west of the site, and that stream runs from upgrading the site down to, I believe, all the way down to the turnpike. There's 22 locations in Pond Brook and in ponds to the west of the site. There's lots of ponds over there by the golf course and north of that. There are 7 locations in Powder Mill Brook. Arm Brook and Pond Brook discharge to Powder Mill Brook before Powder Mill Brook discharges to the Westfield River downgrading the base. And we have 8 locations identified for sampling in the Westfield River. So we're going to use these data in conjunction with our piezometer results, piezometer sampling results that I'll talk about later, and the groundwater data to evaluate not only the nature and extent of PFAS at the site, but how the groundwater and the surface water interact. Meaning, is groundwater potentially contaminated with PFAS discharging to surface water, or is the surface water discharging to groundwater? We just want to get a better handle of that relationship so we can update our conceptual site model and really understand what's going on at the site. Okay, next slide, please. So this one right here just shows our surface water and sediment sampling locations. So the slide on the right, you can see the orange outlines pretty much are the perimeter of the base, and you can see the airfield there. On the left is Arm Brook, and on the right of the site is Pond Brook. And a green location indicates a surface water and sediment sampling location. And a blue location also indicates a surface water and sediment sampling location, but that's also where we collected a piezometer sample and installed a piezometer. I'll talk about that in our next couple slides. So you can see we have locations upgrading to the site on either side of the site, and then our figure on the right here is pretty much shows the area south of the turnpike, south of the airfield, with Pond Brook on the right, Powder Mill Brook and Arm Brook on the left, and the Westfield River is the southernmost water body here. And you can see we have pretty good spatial coverage for surface water, sediment, and piezometer samples in each of these water bodies. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, piezometers. I've talked about these a couple times today. A piezometer is basically a 1-inch stainless steel pipe that's open at the top. And at the bottom, I'm kind of showing a schematic of the piezometer on the right-hand side. At the bottom here, it's slotted so that water can run into the piezometer, into the bottom. So what we do is we install this in a stream bed. We either tamp it down with a slide hammer or a mallet so that it's 2.5 feet into the stream bed. And at that level, we're not collecting surface water, we're collecting the groundwater that's beneath the stream bed. So we'll install that. We'll pump any water out that got in as we were installing it. So we generally take 2 or 3 volumes out, and we look for parameter stabilization to make sure we're not sampling any surface water. We're actually collecting a sample of the groundwater. We have proposed to install 10 of these piezometers at various locations, up gradient, cross gradient, and down gradient, at, as I mentioned before, co-located surface water and sediment sampling locations, so we can compare these data to the actual surface water and sediment samples collected at that location. And as I kind of alluded to earlier, we're going to use these results in conjunction with the surface water data and groundwater data to evaluate the interaction of groundwater and surface water at the site, and also the nature and extent of PFAS at the site. So this next slide here kind of shows you what a piezometer will actually look like once it's installed. On the left, this is pretty much the piezometer. It's just a metal pole in the water. This one's got a cap on it. So it's submerged. That mesh steel I was telling you about where the groundwater enters it is about 2.5 feet below the stream bed. On the right here, our field sampling team has a peristaltic pump attached to some tubing that's routed through a water quality meter. So once the water quality stabilizes, they understand they're actually collecting a groundwater sample and not a surface water sample. They're able to collect a groundwater sample from this piezometer. And these will stay in place, and we'll sample these during the fall as well when we collect our second round of surface water and sediment sampling. Okay, next slide. All right, so here is our project fieldwork schedule. We're constantly, working on access agreements and permits. We'll need to get these as well for any phase 2 locations that we have offsite. Utility locating is also ongoing anytime we break ground. As we mentioned earlier, our first round of surface soil sampling is complete. That was done in September, and we shared those findings with you at the last RAB meeting. Vertical aquifer sampling, we're hoping to wrap up those last 3 locations here in early August. So we'll have all 10 of those locations completed, and we'll share those findings at the next RAB meeting. We have completed our first round of monitoring well installation and sampling. That was wrapped up in July. Those groundwater samples are currently being analyzed, and we'll have those validated and hopefully have those findings for you at the next RAB meeting. piezometer installation and surface water and sediment sampling. That was done in June and July of 2026. We still have a few locations to get there because of access agreements. We hope to wrap that up in early August as well. And again, that was round one from both of these locations. Our round two of monitoring well installation, once we get our data back, we hope to get that, September, October timeframe. We do have some more surface soil sampling to do based on the initial results. That'll be done in October, both our background surface soil sampling and our round two of surface soil sampling to step out and delineate the surface soil on site from the AOCs. Once we have those data, we'll perform subsurface soil sampling from locations in the surface soil where we saw elevated concentrations of PFAS. After we get that second round of groundwater monitoring wells installed, both in bedrock and in the unconsolidated material, we'll collect a comprehensive round of groundwater samples from all the wells. We'll do that once in November of 2026, and we'll also do that in May of 2027, so we can understand if there's any changes in groundwater based on seasonal conditions. As I mentioned earlier, we'll conduct another round of surface water and sediment sampling in November. Probably once we get our first round of subsurface soil sample results, we'll do another round of that next February. And we also have a habitat assessment scope that we'll do next April and May. And we'll use the results from all the data we've collected to date to kind of hone in on what we should be looking at. And then once all this is complete, we can initiate and complete our RI report. So I think that's all I have. I believe the next slide is just for RAB questions, so I'll turn it back over to you, Carla.
Thanks so much, Andrew. I do see a question in the chat from Kristen. We can start with that one. And then as people want to raise hands, that would be great. We can call on you in the order that your hands are raised. Kristen's question is, what is the location for VASO2? That's the first part.
It's at the end of a dead-end street.
Do you want me to move to a map, Andrew? Is it on here?
No, I can pull it up on my computer. I mean, Robert or Tracy, do you remember that street name? We looked at that. So Mosley Avenue, I believe. Yeah, end of Mosley Avenue. Does that ring a bell, Robert, Tracy? So yeah, it's in a city right away at the end of Mosley Avenue, if that rings a bell for anybody.
Kristen said that's her street. She is familiar.
No wow.
The next part of Kristen's question is, will you please share the data in digital spreadsheet format as previously when it's validated?
I will let Robert and Tracy answer that one. I think Robert is having trouble unmuting.
Yeah, I'm going to find him again. I think he joined a different way and
I've got it. Yeah.
Oh, you do? Okay.
I'm on here now. Thank you. Yeah, at this time, the data is not going to be made available until we have an RI report and all the information to go with it, because this could be a more comprehensive set of data. So it can't be uninterpreted data. Like, we need to have the report. We need to have the whole conceptual site model kind of put together. So is the data coming? Yes. Are you going to get it as at the next RAB? Not at this time.
A few of us had a little trouble hearing. Kristen, did you get the response? Did you hear the rest of it? That the data needs to be validated and before it can be shared? Robert, maybe you could repeat the initial part. You were breaking up a little bit.
Yeah, so no, it's more than that it has to be validated. It's going to have the conceptual site model, the report. So we don't want to turn loose of uninterpreted data. So we need to have the conceptual site model put together. We need to have the RI report. We need the information that goes along with the data, because this is going to be a more comprehensive data set. And so we can't just turn it loose without the proper information that goes along with the data. But at the end, yeah, we'll share the data.
The third part of the question in the chat was, where were the locations where bedrock was more shallow than anticipated?
Sorry,
Andrew,
I was on mute.
I think that's a question for you.
Yep, I was on mute. If you could go back, I think 3 or 4 slides, Carla, It's a map of the groundwater monitoring wells.
This one?
Two more, I think.
That one?
This one right here. So
Okay.
it was mainly on the northern side. Uh, so yeah, if you could scroll down just a little bit. Yeah, it was the one on top. I'm sorry, scroll up. I wanted to say a
Sorry.
little further to the north. No, that's okay. It was MW16S, which is to the north, MW25, which is even further to the north here. So yeah, pretty much all the locations that are north of the runway and west. 17 was deeper, 18 was deeper, but 16, 25, 24, I think mainly the northeast were the really shallow locations. I think the rest of them were okay.
Circling back, sorry, to the conversation that we had regarding the data. Kristen was wanting to clarify that it would be in a usable digital format, not just a PDF. So something that like an Excel sheet. Robert.
An Excel sheet. But that's not, not now. That will be when everything's put together. But yes, the answer to your
Kristen,
question is
I did hear him
yes.
say it would be in a usable format in Excel when everything is put together. It's not available now. I don't see any hands raised. Does somebody have an additional question that they'd like to ask? I'm gonna get us back to where we were.
This is Chris Clark. I just have two questions, if you don't mind.
Of course.
Sorry, guys. So the first one was just I wanted to reconfirm when you say surface sampling, could you describe again how deep below the surface are you sampling directly at the surface of surface water, or how deep below are you sampling the water? Would be my first question. I know this has been answered before, but I can't remember. My apologies.
No need to
No, that's okay.
apologize.
We sample from the side of the stream closest to the base, and we generally sample at the midpoint. It's pretty shallow, so and we don't go into the stream. It's not from a boat. It's from just boots. So I would say we're probably sampling maybe a 1 foot thick water column, and it's from the midpoint of that.
Great, thank you so much. Has remedial investigation considered sampling directly at the surface? I know that that's not EPA standard protocol, but I was curious if the RI has considered sampling at the surface, like directly from the surface.
Um, I, I mean, we consider different approaches. That was the one we settled upon in our UFP QAP. So that's just the approach that we follow.
Great, thank you. Yeah, and I see that Kristen mentioned that it was in the QAP. That's right. I apologize. The second question was again, I think I kind of was a little bit confused in the earlier discussion about the timeline. Would the RI and the RAB consider also making a more clarified diagram or flowchart of the new estimated timeline of the remedial investigation? I apologize. There was so many people saying things, and it was a bit overwhelming, and so I was a bit confused about um, the information that was being shared. Um, so would the RI and the RAB be able to produce some form of document or flowchart or spreadsheet to more clearly represent what the actual and some of it's been very, very helpful, and I see the side. So something like this, would they be able to generate something that is more predictive or clear as to why it will take until 2050 to complete the RI?
Hey, Chris, this is Robert. Uh, I don't have that information because that report lies with OSW. I have I have information on like what things that we need to do to get to that point. But as for the long-term schedule, and maybe I wasn't clear. Like that comes from OSD, OSW, whatever that's who that report's generated from, and I don't have like those dates laid out in front of me. I see what you see.
Sure.
We can ask somebody,
Could you
I would
describe
have to.
what OSD and OSW is? I'm
That's
sorry.
just Office of Secretary of War or Defense, just whichever nomenclature you prefer to use. It's good with me.
Oh, I see. I
Um,
see.
yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. So that's who typically was put out by OSD in the past. Now I think the report says OSW. But that's who would have the information as for specific years. Again, I have the information that we need to do, like complete the investigation, complete the background report, feasibility studies, proposed plan, ROD. That's kind of like steps involved in the circle process, which I mean you can look up. But as for specific times, that lies within the purview of the OSW report, and I don't have that. Now maybe I can find that information out, but I don't have any more information on it than you do. It's just looking at that report online.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I think it scares me. That's why I guess I'm asking is because it feels very scary to have such a level of uncertainty
Yeah,
about the plan. It's very scary for me to hear that it's going to take so long,
yeah.
but also at the same time not have a really clear picture. And I understand that you probably also don't have that information, but I think from the RAP's perspective, it would be very, very helpful and probably help quell our fears and our anxieties about this plan. If you could take the chance when you have the time to be able to find that information so that you know, as soon as you're out of the dark, we could understand that information too.
No, yeah, I appreciate that, and I appreciate what y'all as a community. I try to have empathy for what you as a community must go through, and the uncertainty. But again, I do want to stress that at this time, to my knowledge, no one is any longer drinking water that's contaminated with PFAS, and that we have the ability, if it is determined that that someone is, and then we're responsible to do an interim remedial action to take care of that. So that's not going to change. Um, so I hope that helps somewhat. It's not perfect. It's after the fact, and I understand that as a community, like you're upset. I get it. I would, I'm not saying I wouldn't be the same. I would most likely be the same. So I just want you to know that we are doing things. We're attempting, to delineate uh, the extent of the PFAS so that we can make determinations on remediation and when that timeline can be firmed up. That's just not in our hands right now. We do what we can on our end. Again, I can try and find that information out for you, but it is a long-term estimated schedule. It is not necessarily what is going to happen in the facts, like what's going to happen, 5, 10 years from now. But as it stands right now, it is a long-term estimate of the process.
Thank you so much, Robert. I really appreciate it. I guess can I ask one more follow-up? I know we're getting close to time, so I want to
Yeah.
allow other people
You're
the
fine. You're
chance.
fine, Chris.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, I guess I am very curious though about that timeline. Just particularly about designation of responsible party. I know that we've had many meetings and discussions about the determination of who is the responsible party, and I kind of feel like we're in this kind of limbo right now as we always consistently hear that there will be a designation of a responsible party, but I don't I seldom hear a plan or a clear picture about when the actual designation of the responsible party should be. I have tested my blood for PFAS. My grandmother is at the 98th percentile for blood PFAS in the US. She has a variety of diseases, including dyslipidemia. She no longer has a thyroid. She has non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And so when I look at her, when I visit home, it's very, very difficult to look her in the eyes and see the shiny skin beneath her eyes that indicates dyslipidemia, which is highly correlated with PFAS exposure. And so it's very hard to hear that there is still not an indication of a responsible party uh, when it seems very clear from the data that's presented in front of me as a scientist that there is kind of a very heavy burden of truth and evidence that suggests that the DoD is responsible for this contamination. So I'm wondering if is there a clear timeline of when that will happen, or will we kind of remain in this kind of constant state of question and doubt? I don't know if you can answer that question, Robert, or if anyone on the phone call can, but again, it's very difficult to hear that there is some abstraction of truth or some expression of doubt that the military isn't responsible for this contamination.
Yeah, Chris, no, Chris, I understand, and I first I want to just say I'm sorry for you and your family that you've had to go through this. I don't, know what that's like. And I'm sure, I would be like you. I would be upset. I would want to know. I would want to have answers. Um, as for a designation of determination of responsibility, like who is going to be eventually the responsible party, that, yeah, you're right. That's a very ambiguous question right now. That is why we do the investigation, because the DOD is out here doing it. And I just want to say ahead of everyone else, right? The DOD is out here attempting to take, any kind of responsibility that may fall on them. And that's what this investigation is about. But we can't make that determination now because we do not have the data available for that decision. But that's the purpose of the investigation.
Thank you, Robert. I think and I'll close this. I'm sorry to keep continuing. This isn't really a question, but it's very
Yeah,
difficult when probably the most burdened people will be long dead before they actually get a description or a designation that the Department of Defense is responsible for this. And so if
yeah.
this remedial investigation is going to take till 2050 to determine responsibility, most of the people who are in this meeting are going to be long dead.
So that date, again, it's a fluid date. Very well could be. I mean, I'm not going to lie. It could even be longer by the time it's all said and done. That date is when the RI is complete. Feasibility. So a feasibility study has been done. A proposed plan's been done, and a record of decision has been signed by everybody. So we're gonna know ahead of 2050 at least what the outcome of this investigation is and what's going to be the process of remediation. That's what happens at 2050 on that estimated timeline.
Thank you for the clarification, Robert. I appreciate it.
During the discussion, there have been a few comments put in the chat. I'll start with Kathy's because it's applicable to Chris, what Chris was discussing. And she said, not what Chris is asking. I think her intention is he's asking who's responsible. I don't know that there is an answer since that's what's being determined. But question from Kristen is, will the department pay for the GAC change out at wells 7 and 8 and 1 and 2? That's the first part. Is that something that someone can answer?
I have nothing to do with that. I have no idea. At this time, I mean, I don't think I would say. My answer would be just, I don't know. That's not something I'm a part of or would have an answer to.
Okay, Carla, please.
Not if it's not our, I mean, the short answer would be no if it's not our responsibility.
Okay,
But I don't know.
But Robert, you're telling us that in between now and 2050, if somebody's well is contaminated, you guys can take interim remedial action. But guess what? 41,000 people's wells are contaminated. So much so that we have spent $31 million to take the PFAS out of there. It's not a hypothetical. This is not.
No, nobody's saying it's a hypothetical.
Okay, but but you don't understand. We have to change out that carbon all the time. Right? So somebody's well is contaminated. What interim remedial action is the department willing to take? But you're telling me that you can, but you don't.
Sorry, Robert.
Yeah. Not at this time. It would depend on, the responsible
You're breaking up, Robert. I'm sorry. We are
Right.
having difficulty hearing you.
I think it's just that they're allowed to say that they can take an action, but at the end of the day, without determining whatever it is they think is the actual determination of the responsible party, they're not going to take any actions. But their TAP expert determined it. So I understand that this is what Robert is allowed to say, and we love our installation members and our family members in the service. This is nothing against Robert. We know that y'all have your jobs to do, but this is incredibly infuriating because what you're telling us is absolute nonsense here on the ground. And it needs to be said on the record. It is nonsense. You have taken no remedial actions. We have found many wells contaminated. DEP has filtered all of that water. So don't tell me about remedial action when the department refuses to take any.
To provide clean drinking water.
DEP provided clean drinking water, and so did the residents of Westfield. Never has it been the department.
Knowing that we can't resolve this at this time, are there other questions from the RAB? Not seeing any hands or additional questions in the chat, I'm going to move on to the public question portion. If you do have a question, please write it in the chat. I am not seeing any. I'll give it another minute in case you're typing something, you want to hit submit.
Carla, may I ask a follow-up question again? My apologies.
Sure, Chris, no need to apologize. We
Thank you
understand.
so much. Sorry, and this might just be a confusion on my end about process. But who ultimately is the governing body? What institution or person or governing body is um, the judge or the judiciary in determining the responsible party? Because I feel like that has been a question I've asked DEP, I've asked the DoD, and I don't think I've ever had a fully clear answer as to what institution or body actually determines who the responsible party is.
Hey, Chris, this is Robert Lewis again. I would say in general, the data is the determining body that will tell us the answer to that question. And I know y'all are frustrated about how long this process takes, but we are collecting that data. And if we can just be
Right.
given time to
Thank you.
present that data, I think things will become clear. If not fully clear, at least they can start to become clear as more and more data comes in.
Right. And I appreciate that, but I mean, I'm doing my PhD at Harvard, and I know I could say that I'm the scientist that determines whether the data is real or not. And so, but I don't feel like I'm actually the one that gets to determine that call. You know what I mean?
Right. Um, yeah, no, I understand what you're saying, I guess to an extent, but in the end, we're going to take that data and then, present it, and it kind of, whatever the facts, take us, that's kind of going to be the determination.
But is it a judge that is the final determinant?
No,
Is
no,
this like a
sir.
legal proceeding?
No. I mean, maybe it could be a legal proceeding somewhere down the line. That's not for me or you. I'm not that's neither here nor there. But
Yeah.
as for like whether this data presented, we are that lead agent in
Right.
this instance. Now,
Right.
which
Because I mean, I did my bachelor's and my master's thesis on this contamination event, and I
yeah,
would say that the data that I've collected and generated could say that this, like, if there needs to be some kind of judiciary or governing body that's unbiased to make this determination, because it's very difficult to trust that the potentially responsible party is also the one that gets to determine whether they are responsible or not. You know what I mean?
No, I hear you. I mean, I hear you, and maybe I would have some level of mistrust myself, but that's why we involve you in the process. That's why you're here tonight, so that we can communicate and so that we can try and build up a level of trust. But and I'm sure that is hard on your end. I know Kristen has voiced that, and Chris, I've heard you say the same thing. It's hard for you to come to the table with like trust because this happened to your community. But that's what this process is about. And so it's going to take a little give and take so we can have that trust between us, that we're not just out here taking data and then we're going to somehow hide it from you. We're presenting that. That's why we're here. That's why we do this.
Yeah, and this has been fabulous data, and I really appreciate. As a scientist, I very much appreciate all the data generated. I think it comes from a place of like who gets to make the final determination, because you and I could look at the same set of data and then make two separate determinations about what that data actually means. Risk
Yeah.
assessment is not an objective science. It's very much a heavily political science, and so. That's where I guess I'm asking or curious about,
Yeah.
is there some judiciary or governing body that can help facilitate that determination? And I think that, we're doing our best to show up for you. And I know that your team is showing up for us and doing the best you can to show up for us. And I really think that to develop that deeper sense of trust, there must be some form of to make this kind of decision so that it doesn't rest in the community's hands. Because of course, we're going to say that you're the responsible party. Um, so to have that kind of third tertiary decision maker in this process who can fairly balance the interests of both the department and of the community is something that I guess I'm trying to understand. And I appreciate you talking and engaging with me now. I really do, and I think the data is fabulous, and your team is wonderful, and it's great that we even have the opportunity to talk to you all. But that's, I guess, where I'm trying to understand is who gets to make that designation. And I've asked the Department of Environmental Protection in Massachusetts this question at multiple RABs, and I'm still kind of stuck in confusion about who gets to make that determination. And I appreciate that idea that it's the data that indicates it, but at the end of the day, it's a court. It's a court of peers. It's a court of our democracy that gets to determine who and what is actually the data and the burden of evidence. And do
Chris.
you know what I'm
No, I
saying?
understand what you're saying. I understand. And like, you are a stakeholder in this. Community's a stakeholder in this. Mass DEP is a stakeholder in this. The government's a stakeholder. The installation's a stakeholder. These are the people that are going to come together at the end of this RI. And so I'm assuming you put Tamara's here, Caprice is here. I don't think Thomas is here, but these are the people that that they advocate on your behalf as your regulatory body. And so I think at the end of the day we're going to all come together and at least have maybe not a complete total agreement, but we'll have some kind of consensus on what the report says.
Thank you. I yield my time.
That-
I appreciate everyone here.
Mary, I see that your hand's up, but I did want
Yes.
to point out that Tamara from the DEP did make a note in relation to Chris's comments that the facility is in the Commonwealth of Mass. The state would have a say. It is a legal question that would need to be based on the information available. And there are additional comments applicable to the conversation. Kristen just said, sure, but we're the only stakeholders that are going to die from this contamination. And also pointed out that it was DEP that forced the RAB, helped to get the RAB going, made it possible. Mary, you had your hand up
Yes.
first. Mary
I'd like
O'Connell, sorry,
I'd
there
like-
too.
I'd like to echo Kristen's comments. Okay, I have 2 points I'd like to make. It was the residents of Westfield that pushed and pushed hard and fought a long, hard battle to get this whole group together. So let's be perfectly clear and let's understand that. It was the residents. It was not DOD, it was the residents. Secondly, I'm not a scientist, unlike some of the folks on this call, but I have a lot of common sense. We have, all of us, we have just spent an hour, almost an hour and a half on this subject. We all know the truth. We all know who caused the problem. So, we can pussyfoot around, we're waiting for this, waiting for that, extend the deadline another couple of decades, but we all know the truth. So let's be clear on that. Thank you.
Marianne Babinski, you have a question?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I support what Chris is saying, and it goes back to what I said before about how long this is going to take and how many people are going to get up to speed, or how long it's going to take when people have to replace or drop off the planet and have to be replaced. Chris, if you guys are putting together the information, you're going to come up with some conclusion at the end, who's to blame, if that's what you're looking for, who caused this problem, who's got to fix it. And then we have RAB, who's been watching and following along, and you're saying we have an opinion in here too. Is there going to be a judge in the end? And I think, Chris, you can correct me if that's not what you were thinking about, and not some other entity that will then look at the data and say, agree with one or the other. I mean, does that have to happen? Does there have to be a judge? Because otherwise, if we disagree, if you decide it's not your side, Robert, and we decide, as Mary just said, we know who did it, as Mrs. whatever in the library with the tennis racket.
Your clue reference, yes.
Yeah. So if you choose somebody else, this is my problem. I'm looking at how many more years will that add, because should that person or that entity be being involved in all this discussion all this time? Because when it comes down to it and you say, well, you have to decide who's right and who's wrong here, if we disagree with the conclusion at the end, and they say, well, now we need all this time to go back over all the information. So that makes it even more confusing to me. So this conversation right here is, I don't know where it's leading us, but it just, to me, just added a lot more time to possibly coming up with a final decision about, if we're trying to say who we're going to point a finger at, who actually caused this problem in the first place. If that's what this conversation was about. If I'm way off base, let me know.
I'm just going to say we're just collecting data, and we're going to put a report that has the findings of this investigation, and that's what's going to happen at the end of this contract. I'm not you're not doing any kind of determination.
So who's going to make the decision? That's what Chris, wasn't that what you were asking? Who's going to make the final decision?
That's correct.
Yeah.
Where is that person now, or entity or agency or whatever now, that will make that decision?
Again, so again, Barbara Lewis here in the National Guard Bureau, the Restoration Program Manager. I'm going to try and make this clear, because I don't think I'm being clear enough. We're conducting a remedial investigation. At the end of this investigation, we're going to have findings. We're going to take those findings, and then we're going to determine through a feasibility study, a proposed plan, and a record of decision what's going to be done as for remedial action. If you're looking for someone to blame, I don't know what incapacity of what blame you want to have, right? So we're out here doing the nature and extent of any PFAS that is DoD related activities. When we determine the nature and extent of the PFAS that is related to DoD activities, we will put together a feasibility study. We will propose a plan. We will go over this with anybody that is a part of this RAB or a stakeholder. They will have input into what happens. At the end of that, we will have a record of decision that Mass DEP signs off on. The Guard signs off on. The RAB will be a part of this. And then at the end of that, remedial action will take place. But if you're just looking to point the finger, that's not the point.
Well, I'm not looking to point a finger. I'm looking for, because I'm confused about the discussion that just been happening. Because it sounds like you're looking to say who's going to make the decision in the end, take all that data and then tell us what has to be done next. I don't know who that entity is. Is it you? Is it the RAB, or is it somebody else? Because if it is somebody else that can make the decision, we know how things have been changing dramatically, and people who thought they were the decision makers all of a sudden have had that power taken away from them. I mean, it could be a real mess, worse than it is now. So it's not blaming anybody now. You're collecting data, and that's great, but how's that data going to be used in the end? I've seen data collected for years. Everybody comes up with something and all the data is there, and they put it in a notebook and they cover it with hardbound and they stick it in a drawer and it collects dust and nothing more is ever done with it.
Marianne, I think Robert said that the data is being used so that they can put together a proposed cleanup plan. And that's the purpose of the studies, so that plan can be written.
And who decides who agrees with that? I think that's what Chris was saying too. Who's going to make that decision of what to do with the data once it's there? You're going to decide on a cleanup plan, but who's doing the cleanup? All right, we're getting off on a wrong track here. I think we have what we've identified here is there seems to be a lot of confusion about what we've just been talking about. Whose responsibility is going to be? You're going to collect the data. You're going to put together a plan. Who initiates the plan? I don't know if anybody's answered that question yet. If you have, I apologize.
So the restoration program, when we're done collecting data from the remedial investigations, the background studies, the data gap studies, the health assessments, the risk assessments, we'll put together a proposed plan of any DoD-related PFAS cleanup that needs to occur. Mass DEP will be a part of that discussion. The RAB, if it is still ongoing, will be a part of that discussion. We'll have a feasibility study, a proposed plan, and then a signed off on record of decision, hopefully with all the stakeholders in concurrence. That's the journey we're taking together.
Yeah. Is DEP in the room? Did they want to say something?
Yeah, and Thomas Keefe and Tamara are on the call.
This is Tamara. I did contribute our input on the chat. I mean, it is a process. We have to wait for the data, and then it's like any contaminated site. What you're asking is a legal decision, a legal determination that we cannot make right now. Somebody will make it, and the state will be involved, but we cannot make that decision right now. We cannot predict what's going to happen. We're also waiting for the data. And if it points to the facility, then the facility will be. Every contaminated site works that way, and you can read our MCP regulations to find that more detail about it.
Thank you.
Thank you. With no more public questions, this is the standard contact information. It has not changed from last time. It is in your packets. Please do submit your questions and comments through Kathleen, and she will share them with the RAB. We do have a agenda setting meeting in advance of the next scheduled RAB meeting, so that we can get those questions covered. And then again, you are also provided these links. We've checked the links. They are all active, or were as of prior to this meeting. If you have any questions, please do email me regarding those or contact information. Kathleen, would you like to make your closing remarks? And I apologize, we're probably going to go just a couple minutes over, and I appreciate everyone's attendance and participation this evening.
Hi, I just want to say to Andrew, thank you for all the work that you've done in Westfield to collect all the data and your schedule. I think that's very clear to me. But the rest of the meeting, I have been very frustrated, and I'm sorry, but it's not what I expected this meeting to be. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen. Colonel Glass?
Hi, everyone. I just want to take a second to say thank you for everyone's professional candor. Um, I My family lives in the area. My family drinks the water. I want you to know that all 1,000 of us who are in the 104th Fighter Wing and their families care deeply about this situation. So I hope we can keep this going. I know we will keep this going, and I'm proud to work with all of you. And I hope you don't take that as some sort of hand waving on my part in any way, shape, or form. We are dedicated to getting this right, and the frustrations that everyone feels on, I think, on. I hope we don't really have sides, but I understand the emotional responses to this. So, um, yeah, I appreciate everyone, and I know that nothing I'm going to say is probably going to make everyone feel better, but thank you is all I'm going to say.
Thank you, Colonel Glass. With that, we will adjourn. And again, thank you everyone for attending, for your participation, and please enjoy the rest of your evening.
Thank you, everyone, and I hope next time we get to meet in person.
And I hope that we have our October meeting because
I hope so too. I hope so too.
It's just frustrating with the chat too. So I'd like to see everybody's reaction in person.
And we will be preparing for that meeting, I assure you, with the intention that it will be held. But because these things are out of our control, I did want to put that out there, and I apologize if I caused alarm and grief with that. But for people's planning purposes, we do need to let you know that is the possibility.
Carla, do you know when you're going to contact me as to how when you set up the pre-meeting? Do you know when you're going to do that?
I think we give, I don't know if this one I saw. Now let me go back and look at if we set a date for people to give you their questions and for you to have items. We can definitely set that up a bit earlier this time. I can reach out to you with dates. Give me, for us to have time to have the meeting summary ready and get it reviewed by the team and everything, get it out to you guys. And then, from that, we can see a lot of questions and things and base some of it on that. But yeah, once we have that, you and I can set a date with the rest of the team.
Perfect. And can you please try to get the minutes up earlier?
Yes. Yeah. And I appreciate you bringing that to my attention. It was, yeah. Sorry that those were not up there, and I hope you appreciate that as soon as you told me that definitely got up there. We made sure that happened so quickly, and I apologize that wasn't there.
That was thanks to Kristen, because Kristen's a real watchdog, and she does marvelous work for us.
Why can't we hold this meeting in September? Is there any thought of just holding it earlier rather than waiting for the October date?
Oh, good idea.
Could we do that?
I believe in it, and I'm speaking a bit out of turn here, that because of the way contracts are made with all of the, consultants and contractors doing work, and plus the fact that these are built to have actual progress from meeting to meeting, having it earlier would have potentially less of an impact, less to report. Correct me, team, if I, speaking out of turn, but this is a pretty typical. We do, I do these for other bases, and the government shutdown just shuts things down. It doesn't necessarily, with contracting and funding and everything else, allow for that push. I do what I'm told as well. So if that is something that is feasible, it would need to be looked into, and arrangements would need to be made, because then we also get into the issues of spaces and things like that. But
okay, well, I would like to propose that we pick a date in September. Okay, so you're saying everything won't be ready. Fine. This meeting has left us all, lacking in information anyway. Pick a date, September 17th. Why don't we schedule it, and we'll see what we've got going.
We will take that under advisement and discuss with Kathleen after the fact.
Okay, that's my
in that agenda setting meeting.
That's
or before.
That's my suggestion. Pick a date, September 17th. Or
You're so cute, Mary.
No, it's it really.
I hear you.
We're gonna wait another month and get what additional information? Same stuff. This meeting. generate.
No, because potentially having it earlier means the data that Patel's collected will not be ready to present.
Exactly.
And that we will just be back here saying hello to each other.
Well, no, we've got other things to talk about.
September 17th probably would not be a good it's usually a city council meeting.
Sure,
and I have
you're
another
right.
meeting. So you
You're
have
right.
to
The
say
24th. Yeah. The 24th, that's my proposal.
I'll be in South Africa, so I definitely know that I cannot be there to, moderate the meeting. But anyway, I sorry that this can of worms has been opened at the end. I am going to close the meeting. We understand that your frustration. Hopefully, the government is not shut down.
Thank you.
Have a good evening. Bye.
Thank you. Ben.